Washington Commanders eliminated. They're 4-11. Breaking news from Sam.
Sam Howell's been benched. Jacoby Brissett will start against the 49ers. You're welcome, Jacoby. Coach Rivera is announcing.
This is an interesting one because clearly Sam Howell's hit a little bit of a rough patch here. You know, take that description that you had for Mac Jones and take Mark Bulger's career and compress it to Mac Jones and compress it even further maybe to
a single season.
To Sam Howell. Howell never wasn't really that great. He was just intriguing, but clearly he's hit a rough patch here. But the Commanders, man, this is a move. Ron Rivera, almost certainly 1 foot out the door, much like Lovie Smith last year, playing to win when the Texans could have had the number 1 overall pick. The Commanders are sitting there with the 3rd overall pick, and they're going to start Jacoby Brissett, who is definitely playing better than Sam Howell right now.
Yeah.
And this could hurt the Commanders' draft stock a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right move in that Sam Howell has just collapsed in recent weeks. But there's no like long-term purpose to this move. You know what I mean? Like Jacoby Brissett obviously isn't the answer in any kind of long-term. Sam Howell doesn't look like is the answer long-term either, but at least like he was the guy you were looking at this year. So if you have any, I mean, it's almost basically an admission at this point that we just don't have a quarterback anymore. So I have to sit this guy down. He's playing terribly. It's not helping him or us being out there right now. We're going to turn to Jacoby Brissett and hope that we're better this week. But it is basically, you know, rolling up the white flag, putting up the white flag and saying this season's done. We're toast. The Sam Howell thing didn't work. Sorry, and we're out. But man, you look at, I mean, he was a guy that was throwing regularly for over 300 yards, over 7 yards per attempt. The last, 5 weeks now, 255, 300, 127, 102, 56, 2 touchdowns in that 5-week period. None of those games were over 7 yards per attempt. Most of them were under 6. The last 2 have been 3.9 and then 2.5. Just a complete collapse is the word, like a complete and total collapse of Sam Howell's ability to move the ball, to play functional offense, to do anything positive.
Yeah. Sam Howell's game, you've highlighted it the last few game reviews. Look, the negative stuff was there, and you could say, hey, he's a young quarterback. He's gonna take the sacks, the negative plays. He's gonna put the ball in harm's way. But at least once a game, twice a game, 3 times a game, he's making special throws, tight window throws, scrambles. Remember the 1 week against New England, I think he had the best throw of the week, the best scramble of the week, and the worst interception of the week for all quarterbacks, all in one. At least there were 2 good plays in there. Those have been gone these last few weeks. To me, it's a football decision by the coaching staff who only sees the next week. I don't think they're not thinking long term for the future of the Commanders and draft position or anything like that. They don't care. Ron Rivera and in the coaching staff, they're just trying to say, hey, we're going to do what football coaches do and try to win the next football game, and the best person to give us a chance to win next week is Jacoby Brissett.
But I think
that's the decision.
I think it probably also says they don't think Howell can pull himself out of this. Like it's, if you thought that Howell might be able to get himself out of the rut that he's in right now, you might give him another shot and keep going until he does. I think it's also an admission that whatever nosedive he's in right now is a terminal one, and he's not coming out of the other side of it. Because the funny thing is, like all the criticisms we had about him earlier in the season, he's actually improved those things. Like he's getting sacked way less than he was earlier in the year. He got sacked once against the Jets. Like, okay, he got benched, so he didn't play the whole game. But 23 dropbacks, he got sacked 1 time. I mean, the first week, he got sacked 6 times on 40 dropbacks against Arizona, who don't have a pass rush. Like, it's a different world. He is, earlier in the season, the first 7 weeks of the year, every single week, he had a sack on more than 21% of his pressured dropbacks. That's a huge number. Since week 7, only 1 time has he been above 19%. So he's completely shifted. Like the single biggest problem in his game, that's actually improved dramatically, which for him, I think is really big because that was a problem that dated back to college and has always been there. So for him to make material inroads on that element of his game is actually an amazing sign of like growth potential. The problem is, I don't know if it's caused a subsequent collapse in every other element of his game, or if it's just coincidental that whilst he's improved his ability to avoid sacks, he has ceased to be a viable quarterback in any other area. So it doesn't matter. Like he's made an improbable improvement to his biggest weak point as a quarterback, and at the same time, cause or effect, has like lost the abilities that he had elsewhere.
I do think it's a struggle for every quarterback that we would describe as volatile. And again, I don't know what those discussions are like inside the building. Do you think the QB coach isn't like, "Hey Sam, you're a real boomer bust quarterback. We gotta find the balance there." But every volatile quarterback does have to find that balance. Whether you're volatile at a high level like Josh Allen, right, where the highs are as high as any quarterback in the league, but it comes with turnovers, or if you're a Sam Howell who's young and it's like, hey, we don't get sacked 5 or 6 times a game, but you're also making 3 or 4 really nice plays per game. Finding that balance is always a struggle, whether you're Sam Howell, whether you're Jameis Winston, whether you're Josh Allen. Like, it's all different elements of the spectrum. The cause of death for Washington, and by the way, I think it's interesting that Washington and Atlanta were the 2 teams who bought into a 3rd and a 5th round QB, not sight unseen, but with very little experience, and just went all in with those guys this year. Probably won't work out for the Falcons. Still a chance that they make the playoffs. Didn't work out for Washington. I don't think it doesn't mean it was necessarily a bad strategy. I don't know if there were great alternatives, but that was the strategy. The cause of death for Washington, though, was Sam Howell ends up regressing, but all of that, the defense was a disaster.
Yeah,
Absolute
honestly,
train wreck. And then they, in turn, ended up trading, their 2 of their best defensive linemen, Montez Sweat and Chase Young.
the defense might be the cause of death, actually. Like,
That's what it really was.
Sam Howell's fallen apart, and that's why they're turning to Jacoby Brissett now. But, Sam Howell was playing pretty well till week 9 or 10, and at that point they were still, 1, 2, 3, 4. They were 4 and 6, 7. So they were still a losing team, even when Sam Howell was playing quite well. And then when Sam Howell stopped playing quite well, they haven't won a game since that point. So him playing well or not was the difference between struggling to below 500 to you're not going to win anymore. Like, if he's playing this badly, you have 0 chance of winning games. When he was playing reasonably well, or at least giving a bunch of big plays, you had a shot, but you were still losing most games because your defense was terrible. You use that term whack-a-mole a lot with roster construction. The other thing that is in that same kind of realm to me is if you're chasing problems with your golf swing. I've seen your golf swing, but
1 out of every 20 is pretty sweet.
I assume at some point, if you're a good enough golfer, this stops happening. But if you're a terrible golfer, as most people are, you can only sort of think about one element of your swing at a time, right?
Yeah.
So something has happened to your golf swing. You find somebody who can point out the flaw, a pro or whatever, and you'd be like, "Oh, here's your issue. You gotta, tuck this elbow." So you constantly think about tucking this elbow, and then while you fix that, something else goes out of whack, right? Like your hip rotation is off, or you're not looking at the point, or your head's coming up too soon, or whatever it is. And you just spend your entire life like chasing the next problem from your golf swing and only thinking about one thing at a time, and then something else goes out of whack, and then you got to think about that thing. I wonder if that happens with quarterbacks where, and who knows, he might not even be aware of this as like a problem, or the coaching staff's never brought it up. But like, if you're Sam Howell and you look at his early season like we were, and you're like, there's a lot to work with here, but the dude takes sacks at a ridiculous level. He's got to fix that. Like, did he spend the next 6 weeks going, I got to avoid the sacks. All I got to think about is not taking sacks. And then doing that, like focusing so much on improving the sack thing.
Just getting rid of the ball.
When everything else went to hell. And now you got to go back to, I don't know if that happens with quarterbacks where if they're working really hard to improve one specific facet, everything else kind of goes out of whack because your entire mind is focused on that. Or, as I say, it could be complete coincidence that more or less at the same time, his sack rate dramatically improved. Everything else went to hell.
The last thing I want to say here about Washington, if I'm Josh Harris, the owner, I'm stepping in and not letting this happen.
What? The move?
I'm not letting Jacoby Brissett start.
What? Why?
Washington's 4-11, currently the number 3 pick. If Arizona wins one of the next 2 games, maybe it's a long shot. I don't know the exact tiebreakers. Like if Arizona and Washington both have the same record, I don't know what the tiebreaker situation would look like. The number 2 pick is that valuable that I don't care about these last 2 games to have Jacoby Brissett go out there just because he's going to play better than Sam Howell.
I mean, they're also against San Francisco and Dallas.
It's against San Francisco and Dallas. You're probably going to lose anyway.
Right.
But they beat, like Sam Howell got, in his first NFL start, they beat the Cowboys in Week 18 last year, right? So you don't know what's going to happen. But Brissett, the last 2 times he's come in, this offense has looked dramatically different. So far from what we've seen.
You think
all I'm saying is, and Arizona doesn't have an easy road either. They have to play. Who do they have this? San Francisco. No, it's Seattle in the last week of the season. Philly and Seattle. Like Arizona's probably going to lose the next 2 games. But if Arizona sneaks a win in there, and as the Commanders, they sneak a win in there, and they had a chance to go up to the number 2 pick and have either Drake May or Caleb Williams, that is a massive move, right? Again, the Lovie Smith one went from, it ended up working out, but Lovie Smith earned the Texans the 2 pick instead of 1, and so they didn't have their choice of Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. They ended up with C.J. Stroud, which looks great for the Texans. This move, though, if Washington ends up picking 3rd instead of 2nd, you're looking at the difference between one of those 2 quarterbacks. Who knows what the drop-off is to QB3 in this class. Maybe you grab a Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, there are good players at the top, but you're missing out on one of those top 2 QBs.
I mean, I don't think Jacoby Brissett makes much of a difference in terms of their ability to win either of these 2 games. If I was Josh Harris and I was intent on that, definitely, I need to lose these 2 games, I would let them start Brissett, and I would have a word and say, hey, if by some miracle this game looks like it's actually going our way, find a way of making a balls of it in play calling terms, right?
No, that's illegal.
Run the ball.
That is illegal.
Whatever.
All I'm saying is it's a lot easier to say, yeah, Sam Howell's just a young quarterback still developing. Of course he's our starter.
But the Eagles did this. They pulled their starting quarterback when they were, when it looked like they could win a game. They pulled the starting quarterback. They got it. Like it was like a butterfly effect. The entire Eagles thing almost traces back to that one decision to lose a game deliberately.
Week 18 game.
Right.
Butterfly affected into like 6 really good players.
Yeah. So I think you can just say, look, put them in. That's fine. But if it looks like we're actually winning this game, you need to call 7 straight run plays, whatever. Find a way of losing it, even if it's not inserting Howell back into the lineup. I can't see that being an issue, but I think there's a way of doing it.